Hi there, welcome to Yogaphysiozone. I'm Sinead, and today we're going to talk about hands and wrists, and what certain considerations we need to take for them when we're doing yoga. So apart from like expressing certain poses and looking pretty when we're doing certain poses, our hands in yoga are being asked to take weight during quite a few of the poses. The poses on all fours, where you're kind of here like this, or downward dog, or handstands. Let's get fancy, handstands. So having the base of support right is really important. But remember that during our everyday life, we don't take a lot of weight through our hands, except maybe for leaning through our shoulders at certain times of the day. But in general, we don't take weight through our hands. So when we start to do that, they can get sore, particularly if you're over 40 and you have a bit of wear and tear on your wrist joints or your hand joints. They take time to adjust to the new stimulus that's going through the bones and the joints. And like stimulus is good, and it's good particularly to prevent osteoporosis, that we do have weight going through our joints. Like weight bearing exercises are good, but do them with caution if you're starting out, because overdoing it is going to make your joints get sore, and particularly if you've had previous injuries as well. So just bear that in mind and go easy and be patient. It can take months for your wrists and your hands to be comfortable taking weight. So that's the kind of time frame you're looking at, not a few weeks. That's the first thing to get straight. So what I'll talk about first of all is the ideal hand position in yoga, just so that then you can pitch yourself against that, or even aspire to it at some stage. So there is a hand lock called the Hasta Bandha, okay, in Sanskrit, and that's kind of the ideal position for your hands to actually weight bear. Okay, when you're taking weight through your hands, so if you're on all fours or you're going to do a downward dog, um, the part of your hand that you want to be taking weight through is the base of your fingers, which is on the opposite side of your knuckles. Okay, so there are your knuckles, just those pads of your hands there, and also the base of your thumbs, and then this part of your fingers, the very top of your pads, kind of there. Okay, now you may take weight through the whole hand, that's fine, but you can actually get a better base of support if you do it this way. So I'll show you on me. So when I'm putting my hand down, you'll notice I'm putting my weight, so particularly the base of the index finger and thumb there, because those are better joints for weight bearing. They absorb weight a little bit better than the joints of your little fingers and that. So you putting your hand down, and you're just kind of putting a small bit more weight towards the index finger and thumb, but you're feeling the weight on the pads of your hand. Now you'll see the way my hand kind of claws up like that. So I'm not weight bearing through this part, but only the top. You probably can't see my radiation, but only the top of my hand like that, okay? But also, once we have it on the ground, what we do with our right hand is imagine that we've our hand on a jar lid and we're screwing it shut. So we're not actually moving our hands, but we're kind of angling our hand a little bit like that, as if we're screwing the jar shut, is what they call it. And then you do it the opposite way on the left hand. So you lefty people, you'll have to work this one out. But if you were closing a jar with your right hand, it's that kind of screwing motion that kind of just puts more weight on the index finger and thumb. So that's the ideal, that's Hasta Bandha. So I'm then taking weight on the pads of my fingers and then on the bases of my fingers there. So I hope you can kind of get, that's the Hasta Bandha. Okay. But you may choose, actually, maybe you're not able to do that, or maybe you're not able to put flat hands, so you have a couple of options. You can come up on your fingers, on your knuckles like that. That is one option there. So that you can do your poses, your cat-cow, tiger curls, all kinds of exciting, fire hydrant, everything. And even downward dog can also be done in that position, although probably you'll have to see how much it suits you, but that is an option for people. Or some people prefer putting their hands down with their thumbs forwards like that. So you do whatever you have to do to keep yourself comfortable. The main consideration I would see for people when they are trying to put weight through their hands is not in fact their hand, it's often that their wrist joint has been injured. So your wrist, when you are taking weight, is at about a 90-degree angle. Okay, so notice that, about a 90-degree angle. Mine isn't quite there, as you can see somewhere. That's 0, I should be up at 90, but as you can see I have a bit of work to do on that. But when you are taking weight on all fours, in the ideal position, your hand should be directly under your shoulder. Excuse me. And so here we are, and that forces my wrist into that 90-degree position. If that's not possible for you, you have a few different options. If you put your hands a little bit forwards, it changes the angle, so it's not quite as a sharp an angle. It's kind of more like a 70-degree angle. So for some people that works really well. That just putting the hands a little bit forwards of your shoulders just allows you to comfortably take weight if your wrists can't get to that more kind of sharp angle. In time, you might find that you're actually able to walk the hands back and you can kind of gently work the wrist back to 90 degrees. Sometimes that's possible, sometimes it's not. It depends on your injury. Bear in mind that for some people, the actual weight bearing through the joint, it doesn't like taking that much weight. So that the wrist angle isn't the problem, it's that the actual joints themselves don't like it. So your option here is to pad yourself up. Roll up your mat and just have a little bit of padding under your wrists like that. So that they can kind of just take the weight a little bit more. Being careful not to force them back into more flexion. So you might find that you just put the heel of your hand, not the whole hand, onto the rolled up part. So I'm not putting my whole hand on, I'm just putting the heel on like that, so that I kind of get that, or halfway on probably is where a nice I suppose middle ground is. So see, play around with that, okay? And then finally, if you really can't put the weight on the wrist at all, then your choice is to use your forearms for those poses, okay? And that's perfectly acceptable, except when you're using your forearm, it changes the angle of your back a little bit. So my back is kind of like straighter, whereas my bum is sticking up a bit more, and I'm kind of changing things a little bit. Now that's okay for some poses, but you might find for your cat-cow it limits you a little bit. So what you do in this situation, I'm just going to get this, is get a yoga block or two, or even a cushion or something like that, and lean your forearms on them and use your forearms as your wrist, and then you can do your cat-cows, you can do your tiger curls. It'll feel slightly different, but you'll get used to it. But ideally you want, that would be a better height for me, so I'm kind of bringing myself so that my back is straight. So obviously that's not very stable. I'd have to have something else to maybe a little bit thicker, but that kind of gets me into the same rough position. But having the forearms in contact with the ground or with something else, or a cushion or something like that, will work fine for you. And what it means for poses, like downward dog, is that you end up doing a dolphin pose instead. So instead of kind of, nice downward dog, you're going to be doing more of a dolphin pose, which is a beautiful pose in its own right. And then eventually, when you have progressed to doing what would have been handstands, you don't do a handstand, you do a peacock stand. So there are stands, instead of standing on our hands, we stand on our forearms, and that's the Pincha Mayurasana, which is a beautiful pose in itself. So there's plenty that you can do without having to take weight through your hands. So I hope that helped. Do share any problems that you have with your individual yoga teacher, so that they might be able to think of other ways that you can kind of negotiate your issues. But it certainly shouldn't stop you from doing yoga, and the best of luck, and let me know how you get on. Thank you.